We'll begin this meeting with the nomination of a temporary chairman. I'd like to nominate Jim Bach as the temporary chairman. Is there a second?
I second that.
Okay. We'll call for a vote. Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the annual reorganizational meeting of the Mill Creek Township Board of Supervisors to order. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on our agenda is the nomination for an election of chairperson. I would like to nominate Dan Olette for chairman.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a second. I'll call for a vote. Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
Mr. Olette?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Dan, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll move on to the nominations for the election of the vice chair. I'd like to nominate Jim Bach as the vice chairman.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. We'll call for the vote. Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Moving on to item 6, the appointments. Township Secretary, I'd like to nominate Cheryl Williams for that position. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Mrs. Clear, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Moving on to the Township Treasurer position, I'd like to nominate Melanie Page. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Call for the vote. Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. The position of Township Engineer, I'd like to nominate Rob Rodemeyer, P.E. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. We'll call for the vote. Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. The position of Township Solicitor, McDonald, Illig, Jones, and Britton, Mark Shaw, Esquire, as the principal contact. I'll make a motion to that effect. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Call for the vote. Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
Number 10 on our agenda, I move that Daniel Olette be appointed to the employee position of Municipal Administrator with oversight of the Department of Public Works, Department of Engineering, the Department of Planning and Development, and the Mill Creek Fire Department, and the Board's liaison to the Fire and Emergency Service Commission, Planning Commission, and Zoning Hearing Board. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. I'll call for a vote. Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
Mr. Olette?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
Okay, moving on to item 11. I move that James Bach be appointed to the employee position of Municipal Administrator with oversight of the Department of Administration, Department of Community Relations and Sustainability, and the Department of Parks and Recreation. He'll be the board's liaison to the Parks and Rec Commission and the Recycling Education Committee. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Very good. Call for the vote. Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Item 12, I move that Kim Clear be appointed to the employee position of Municipal Administrator with oversight of the Mill Creek Police Department and the Department of Emergency Management and chairperson of the Safety Committee. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we'll call for the vote. Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
I'd like to make a motion that Dan Olette be appointed the Township's delegate and Kim Clear the Township's alternate delegate to the 2025 PSATS Conference, each in their capacities as municipal administrators.
I'll second that.
Okay, we'll call for the vote. Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Item 14, I move that James Bach be appointed the Township's representative and Daniel Olette and Kim Clear be appointed alternate representatives in their capacity as municipal administrators to the Executive Committee of ECATO for 2025. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, call for the vote. Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Item 15, I move that Kim Clear, in her capacity as Municipal Administrator, and Daniel Olet and James Bach, in their capacities as Municipal Administrators, respectively, be appointed the Township's representative and alternate representatives to the Erie Area Council of Governments for 2025. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we'll call for the vote. Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Item 16, I move that Director of Planning and Development Matthew Waldinger and Jean Clement be appointed respectively as a representative and alternate representative to the Lake Erie Coastal Zone Advisory Committee for 2025. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I'll call for the vote. Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Item 17, I move that Kim Clear, in her capacity as Municipal Administrator, and Jean Clement be appointed respectively voting representative 1 and alternate to the Erie Metropolitan Planning Organization, also known as the Erie MPO, Coordinating Committee for 2025. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. We'll call for the vote. Mrs. Clear, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Item 18, I move that Director of Planning and Development Matthew Waldinger and Chad McConnell be appointed respectively voting representative number 2 and alternate to the Erie Metropolitan Planning Organization, MPO, Coordinating Committee for 2025. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we'll call for the vote. Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Item 19, I move that Planning and Development Director Matthew Waldinger and Kim Clear, in her capacity as Municipal Administrator, be appointed respectively voting representative and alternate to the Erie Metropolitan Planning Organization Technical Advisory Committee for 2025. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, call for the vote. Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Item 20, I move that the bond for the treasurer be established and maintained at $2 million for 2025. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we'll call for the vote. Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, we have fund depositories for 2025. Our financial institutions that we're identifying here are PNC Bank, First National Bank, Citizens Bank, Northwest Savings, Newberger Berman, Private Equity Fund, and Gannett, Welsh, and Kotler. I'll move to approve those depositories for 2025 and to authorize the following signatories of James Bach, Kim Clear, and Daniel Olet. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. There are more. Okay, Vanguard International Growth, DFA International Corps, Multi-Employer Property Trust, Erie Bank, and PA Local Government Investment Trust, Pliget. All right, I think that's the whole list now. So is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, we'll call for the vote. Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. I move to approve the following insurance carriers for 2025. For workers' compensation, we have MRM Trust and the Volunteer Fire Department Workers' Compensation AmTrust Insurance. For property, general liability, auto, and professional liability, we have Zurich American Insurance. And for cyber insurance, we have Crum and Forster Insurance. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, call for the vote. Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Ms. Page, would you review Resolution 2025 R1, which is a resolution for the municipal police pension law to set the required police contribution rate for Mill Creek Township Police Fund for 2025.
Yes, I would ask for you to approve a motion to adopt Resolution 2025-R-1 for the contributions that are required for the police contribution rate into the Mill Creek Township Police Pension Fund for 2025 to remain at 5.5%.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board? Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay.
And
All
I'll second.
right, it's been moved and seconded. We'll call for the vote. Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay. Item 24, I move that the Township Secretary provide the Board of Auditors written notice of the appointments of the municipal administrators and their respective employee responsibilities, and to confirm the Board's establishment of bond for the treasurer in the amount fixed. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we'll call for the vote. Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, we're going to move on to appointment of and reappointment of positions for commissions and committees for the following year. For the Erie County Tax Collection Committee, Melanie Page, delegate. Kim Clear, alternate. Fire and Emergency Services Commission, Scott Height, citizen representative, will be reappointed. The International Property Maintenance and Fire Code Board of Appeals, Edward Betza, Esquire, solicitor, reappointment. Mill Creek Township General Authority, Cheryl Mitchell, reappointment. Parks and Recreation Commission, Nicolina Pierce, reappointment. The Planning Commission, Anthony Sitter, reappointment. The Recycling Education Committee, these are all reappointments. Steve Cornelius, Carl Cronmiller, Emily Dulesky, Janine Fennel, Kenneth Fromnecht, Dana James, Chantel Rodriguez, Mary Beth Santucci, Maria Spagnola, Jessica Stutzman, Sean Stutzman, Monica Ziegler, and Judy Zelina. The Vacancy Board, Brian McGrath, is a reappointment. And the Zoning Hearing Board, both reappointments would be Robert Tanner and Jeremy Toman as a solicitor. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Call for the vote. Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. The Mill Creek Township Board of Supervisors has officially adopted the following meeting schedule for 2025. The regular meetings of the Board of Supervisors will be held on the second Tuesday of each month at 9:30 a.m., except in January and December, and the fourth Tuesday of each month at 4:30 p.m., except in December. There will be one meeting in December on Tuesday, December 16, 2025, at 4:30 p.m.
Dan, we need to vote on that.
Okay, sorry about that. Is there a,
I'll make a motion.
all right, is there a second?
I'll second.
Great, thank you. Call for the vote. Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
Mr. Bach?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, I believe that concludes our business here. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second. Yes.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned at 9:15. Thank you.